Hey everybody. Well, it's about 3 minutes to 1 o'clock, and I'm so excited that you're going to be joining me today. So I'm going to wait for a few more people to come on, but my name is Amy Schmidt. I am the founder of Fearlessly Facing 50. I'm an award-winning podcast host, a best-selling author, a TEDx speaker, motivational speaker, and media expert all over the country. And I am so excited for today's show. I'm just really excited about it. It's the launch of something new. It really is a branch of Fearlessly Facing 50. I have a very special guest today, and he's just going to hit it out of the ballpark. That's all I got to say. And for all of you watching, whether you are a 20-something or a parent of a 20-something or a young adult, this is a challenging time, right? A challenging time for parents. It's also equally as challenging for our young adults. So that's what we're going to be diving into today. Hi, Molly. Oh my gosh. Hi, neighbor. You're looking good too. Katerina has joined. Hamilton has joined. You know what, Hamilton, I'm just going to have you request to join and I will put you on. We're going to start in 3 minutes. We are going to keep these shows to about 30 minutes, but I have to tell you today, it might go 5 minutes over. So just adjust your calendar or your clock as necessary, because we have so much good content to cover. And I just want to thank everybody for submitting questions. That's one of the best parts of doing what I do. Not only do I walk away learning from the guests that we have on the show, but I also just love to make the connections with all of these people. You know, when we really share our advice and our wisdom, we create a masterpiece, because we walk away with tangible takeaways that we can put into our life, into our journey. And, these little habits that we can change, these conversation starters that we can really change and put into our life. So thank you for joining me. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to have our guest on. Hamilton Winters is joining me today. He is an incredible human. That's just what I'll start, and you will see it throughout the 30 minutes. He has many gifts, but a huge gift of connecting young adults, not only connecting with 20-somethings, but connecting them to their city where they are, connecting them with other people, finding friends and peers for them, and growing their faith along the way. So I'm excited to have him. Thank you all for joining. We're still about a minute away, I think, from 1 o'clock, so I want to get as many people on as we can. I also wanted to let you know that you can go ahead and follow here at theamy.schmidt. It used to be Fearlessly Facing 50, but we transitioned over here and we have it now at theamy.schmidt. You can follow along on Facebook, same thing, The Amy Schmidt. Just Google that or go into Facebook and you can find it there. This episode will not only be live here on Instagram, it'll also be dropped as a podcast episode that you can share with others. Maybe some of you 20-somethings want to share this conversation with your parents. You can go ahead and send them that audio file once it drops as a podcast. It also will be on my YouTube channel. So there's many ways of both getting this content, sharing this content with others that might not be able to join today. So I'm going to go ahead and bring Hamilton on, and second, and then he should be joining me. So just before we get started, thanks so much. We have quite a few people on. And I think, yep, here he comes. Hey, Hamilton.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. It's great to see you.
It's great to see you too. I'm so excited. And people are coming on and joining, and it's about 1 o'clock. So we're going to get started. And I think I just have to start by saying I've been prepping for this. It's a conversation that's really near and dear to my heart. As you know, I have 3 in this age group of 20-somethings. So I'm kind of walking the walk and talking the talk. And I have to say, Hamilton has been such a mentor, such a connector for my son. It's been amazing. And just the conversations that I've had with you over the last, 18, 20 months have just been amazing. And I wanted to share before we got started, Hamilton, just how I met you.
Yes, please.
Is that all right?
Absolutely.
So, I think it was probably my second or third visit to Atlanta where my son had moved to. And as you know, Connecticut to Atlanta, big change. Most of his friends were going to Boston and New York. And this was a a real leap in a lot of ways. And I don't think he'll mind I'm saying that, but it really was. And he was excited, and, it's first job, and he moves, gets his apartment, and he's getting settled in. And as we'll talk about today, there's a lot of transitions that go into 20 somethings, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of unknowns. You're paying rent, have car insurance. We say off the payroll over here in the Schmidt family. So, you're pretty much, you're soaring, you're on your own. And I think it was my third visit. And I just took some time, one, because Atlanta's a new city for me, and I love learning through him about the city, but I really wanted to find a church community for him. And I know Molly is watching today, and I think I had this conversation with her. I think she might have been one of the first people I had a conversation with after I met you. But I went to just kind of looking for community for Noah, and I went over to North Point, and sure enough, Matt just said, "Hey, I've got a 20-something. I'd love them to kind of get some information." And here it is. I walk out in the parking lot, and I shake hands with this incredible human, Hamilton, and he tells me a little bit where his heart is, where he is in his journey, and we just connected. So that's where I'm going to leave it right there, because it was an amazing introduction to kind of where we are today.
No doubt. No coincidences.
Yeah, no coincidences. So as we start now, it's 1:02. I'm going to start with a quote that Hamilton sent me, and I want everybody on. I see there's a lot of people here joining. This is something he sent me today. Perhaps no decade in life is more foundational, more important, more turbulent, and more consequential than your 20s. 20 marks the acquisition of enough lived experience to earn the respect of adults without enough lived experience to truly understand what it means to be one. A decade where decisions truly become one's own, but so too does the responsibility of those decisions. A decade where good choices have the potential to reap generational rewards, but just as easily, poor choices have the potential to reap generational consequences. If done wisely and lived fully, one's 20s can hold the fondest memories, spark the deepest and longest relationships, and serve as a catalyst for a lifetime of contribution to one's own flourishing and the flourishing of others. Make them count, because you can't get them back once they're gone. That's goosebumps for me. And I see a lot of people in here putting hearts and saying they love that. Let's dig into this. Why are the 20s so important?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there are a lot of different answers to that, but kind of in summarization of what you just read, they're the first time in your life that you have real freedom. But they're also the first time in your life where you have things that can both lead to, like I said, your flourishing and the flourishing of others, or your demise and potentially the demise of others. And so I can't think of another decade where there's more change, maybe other than the first decade of life, from going from a newborn to a 10-year-old, right? From going from a 20-year-old, maybe still in college, to a 30-year-old with the potential of being married with kids, all within 10 years. And its first jobs, and its first homes, and its first relationships. And it is the pressure cooker of humanity. And so when you think about your 20s, and in talking with people who are out of their 20s, what I commonly hear from people is like, man, if I could do anything to, I'd do anything to go back to those years. Yeah. And most of the time it's to live them differently than they did. And so what can we do in our 20s? And for people who are just beginning that journey, to replicate some of our successes, but not have to replicate some of our failures.
So well said. Why is this age so important to you? Why are you so passionate about it? And why do you do what you do? And please tell everyone that's watching now what you do.
Yeah, no doubt. So I have the privilege of working in vocational ministry, which was not part of my life plan until recently. I came from the business world, and so only recently has God placed this particular ministry environment on my heart. But the reason why it means so much to me is because, like so many of the people that I have the pleasure of leading, I graduated from college, went to grad school, moved to the big city right after I graduated. I'm from a small town in Louisiana. So the Duck Dynasty characters are my neighbors. Legitimately, that's my neck of the woods. So moving from that to the city of Atlanta with 6-7 million people in the metro area is a big transition. And so coming out of grad school and college, kind of building a lifestyle that was not reflective of the tradition in which I was raised. Those habits, those activities, they followed me to Atlanta. And so I moved to Buckhead because the one person that I knew in town, who was the guy that hired me for my first job, knew that that's where the party scene was and knew that that was what I was into. And so for the first, I don't know, 6 or 8 months of living here, I went out a lot, and I was just desperately looking for community. I'm looking for all the right things in all of the wrong places, and I found it. But it led me to one of the deepest and darkest places in my life. And so went through career after career, just couldn't figure out, how to make it stick. And ultimately, God was so patient with me, allowed me to run into the right people, which what got me connected, brought me back into the fold of church. I was able to see ministry as I had not seen it done before. Found some people that were cool enough to drink a beer with, but loved Jesus, and that just wasn't my experience. And so coming back in, they allowed me to ask my stupid questions, to understand more about the Bible and understand it through an adult lived experience of, wow, these aren't perfect characters that God used. They're very broken characters, just like me. Maybe God can use me too. And so I get the privilege every day to create environments that I wish would have existed when I moved here 6 or 7 years ago for people like Noah. I see myself in Noah's eyes every time I have a conversation with me and with him, and I see my mom in your eyes when I have a conversation with you. So it's a privilege to be able to give back in that way.
Yeah, it's amazing. And when you say you kind of, you're in a new city, I mean, I think we realize now as parents that, our kids are global kids. They may not live down the street. They may not live within a 2-hour drive. And we want them to explore and to learn but what was it like when you left? I mean, when you went to Atlanta, I'm sure your mom was saying, oh man, that's a long ways away.
Yeah, it was. She has always historically been supportive of whatever I want to do. We might get there in the conversation, even at times where it might not have been the choice that she would have made. She still did her best to support me in that and let me kind of figure that out on my own. Obviously within the bounds, but moving to Atlanta is probably not what a mom from Louisiana wants their kids to do. And then after me, my sister, my middle sister moved to Los Angeles, and then my youngest sister moved to Lynchburg, Virginia.
Wow.
And so now my mom's racking up sky miles. She can't even have a job because she's bouncing around different parts of the country visiting us.
Yeah.
And fast forward to today, where my middle sister is now in Atlanta and is involved with Buckhead Young Adults, which is the organization that I have the pleasure of leading. And then my youngest sister is moving here after nursing school in May. And so now my parents are the only ones that are kind of out of Atlanta. And don't tell them this, but my main strategy is to get everybody here. So we know what the ace in the hole is going to be there. It's eventually going to be grandkids, but
exactly.
we'll see.
Exactly.
For her and for me, because we have such a close relationship. It was tough, but distance does make the heart grow fonder. And it made the times that we were able to get back together even that much more meaningful. Like this weekend, they're coming in for Easter, and it's going to mean as much, if not more, because we're apart together. If that makes sense.
I get it.
Would be if we had stayed together the whole time.
Exactly. So let's talk about some of the challenges that these 20-somethings, now I'll say young adults, and let's talk about that, because I don't know if they should be called young adult kids, if they should be called 20-somethings. So I'm going to go with 20-somethings, and please share your advice on that. But, what are you seeing as some of the challenges? As parents, we kind of sit back and think, well, they're online all the time, they're not connecting in person, and they're feeling very lonely. I even think as adults, we're searching for community. So how can we get these 20-somethings together?
Yeah, that's a great question. You hinted at the young adult kids comment. It's probably because I put that in the document when we were prepping for this. But, I hear a lot of parents respond or refer to their children as young adult child, my young adult child. And it's harmless, until you realize, like, wow, maybe I'm hindering their growth, even in my own mind, of still referring to them as my young adult child.
Right.
They're adults, and while they are your offspring, they're no longer a child in need of a parent. They're more in need of a mentor or a coach or a spiritual, even advisor or advocate for God. Somebody that acts like almost bumpers on the bowling lane. You're not the parent who is the ramp that they need to push the ball off of anymore. Now you're just trying to stay within those lanes so that they can bowl a strike or at least hit a pin, for lack of a better metaphor. But even the word young, we talked about this a little bit before the show of That is an adjective, but the emphasis should be on adult, because the world is going to treat them like an adult. And if you're not treating them like an adult, you might be hindering their growth. So without getting on a soapbox there, it's just the language we use is important. So
It's
20-something
so
tends to be a better term for me to be able to approach these adults with and be like, hey, you're not a kid anymore. I'm going to treat you like an adult. I'm not your dad. I'm your peer, but I have a little bit more experience under my belt. And hopefully we can get you some exposure to people who have even more experience to help you live these years right. But to go back to your original question, which is connection and the problems that they face, it's a lot.
Yeah.
You know, when you think through any generation's lived experience, this generation, and I'm talking the end of millennials, which I happen to be in that kind of gap. I turned 29 tomorrow. So I'm right at the tail end of my 20s, but behind me is Gen Z, you know, yes. And Gen Z, you might think of them as elementary, middle school, high school kids. These are grown adults. They are in grad school or in jobs. They are not, you know, the future generation. They're the generation of now. And so their lived experience has been more so even a social experiment of having devices in their hands where they can be connected, but really not having much face-to-face interaction. They've had a significant portion of their developmental years cut away by the pandemic, and they're coming out of it. And I had a young adult the other day who looked at me and he said, I'm 22, but I feel like I'm the same development when I was 18, 4 years ago.
Wow.
And I was like, tell me about that. He's like, man, I feel like I've had such a hard time getting back on my feet. And I woke up and I'm not a college kid where people are, you know, expecting me to be a knucklehead, expecting me not to figure it out. I'm 22 and they're expecting me to figure it out, and I don't feel like I'm developed. And so, you know, that's one issue. Dating is another issue. I mean, just relationships in general tend to be the primary source of confusion and anxiety. And, you know, this probably, I don't know if this will come as a surprise to you, but I get an email on average about 2 months from generally a mom about generally a young adult son who is desperate for them to find community because they have no friends. I've been in this job for almost 2 years, and I get one every 2 months. So you do the math. That's a lot of moms and a lot of sons. And it's not always sons and it's not always moms, but generally it is. And some of the stories that I hear from people, that guy I mentioned that said he's not developed any more than he was when he was 18. I spent an hour with him at the church, told him all about our program, what we do. His mom reached back out and said, hey, I just wish that you would take him to lunch. Maybe that'll work. He just needs to have some face-to-face. So I took him to lunch. And so we're talking, and I'm like, you know what, tell me about you. He tells me about him. He asked me, like, so what do you do for a living? And I'm like, we just spent an hour at church together talking about, anyway, I re-explained it all to him. And I said, what does your day-to-day look like? What's your existence look like? You know, what do you like to do for fun? He goes, well, other than you, I don't really have any friends.
Wow.
I said, other than me? You just asked me what I do for a living. And other than me, you don't have any friends? And I'd like to think that he's the exception to the rule, but the more I do this, the more I realize he might be the rule. Maybe our connected young adults are the exception. So what can we do to help maybe the rule figure out what the exception is doing to connect with each other? And it's an uphill battle, absolutely an uphill battle. So that's just a real tangible story that just, I mean, it breaks my heart.
Oh, I mean, that's wisdom right there. We're getting so many comments on this. That's unbelievable. That just made me stop in my tracks there for a second. You know, and we're saying, you know, maybe a mom reaches out or a parent reaches out or somebody reaches out to you. You know, let's talk about boundaries here. Is that parents overstepping, trying to be too involved? Are we that generation that's just helicoptered too much and we're trying to, you know, what is that thing they say, plow the snow or something and make them a nice path? Are we overstepping?
You know, I can't speak to everybody's experience, you know, because I don't know what your relationship is like with your young adult. I feel like my mom did a really good job of being involved and making sure that we had regular check-ins, and but not steering me, kind of staying in my wake and just listening. And you know, I put on there, my greatest advice to a young adult parent is the same advice that she says is the greatest parenting advice she was ever given, which is always preserve the relationship. Do whatever it takes.
You got to say that again. That's
always preserve the relationship, because there's a good chance that you're not going to agree with a few, if not most, of the decisions that your 20-something makes. But you can either be right, be vocal about it, and potentially endanger the relationship, or listen, try to understand, ask more questions than comments that you make, and maybe, just maybe, your shoulder is still the one that they choose to cry on.
Exactly.
But you can lose influence so easily. And I wish it wasn't like that, you know?
Right.
And maybe, you know, this is and I would probably believe that it is a unique situation, that someone like Noah has a mom like you, or that I have a mom like me, like mine, that is that person for us. But man, think about the generation that comes behind us, or Noah's generation, from the broken homes. That the majority of these kids, they come from single parent households, right, or broken families. And so they already have that familial trauma. And so whatever you can do to muster that influence, the only thing worse than not having influence is having it at one point and losing it. And so do whatever you can to preserve the relationship. You don't have to agree with everything that they do, but just knowing that you will be there regardless of how the decision turns out, is more than your young adult child could ever ask for.
Yeah, that's great advice. You know, I always talk about listening more than lecturing, and I feel like we move from that caregiver to an advisor. Do you feel like you're doing a lot of listening, or as their mentor, you know, are you doing a lot of lecturing? Are you telling them, hey, this is what you should be doing?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of questions over comments. And in a lot of ways, this is something that I have to do on a daily basis. You have to earn the right to be heard. And in a lot of ways, I haven't earned the right to be heard. But before they'll listen to anything I have to say, they usually will allow me to ask questions. Right. And that allows me to earn the trust, which gains the influence, which allows me to be in a position where I can make the comments that I feel like need to be made. You know, this is, I had a conversation with somebody last. Okay, well, that was strange because we got cut off. So sorry about that. It just completely went out. So I think they're having a little issue. So I'm going to wait for it because there's so many people on. I'm going to wait for Hamilton to join in again. And we will obviously be sharing this. But it did. So funny that just went like that. So I'm going to wait. Thank you for rejoining. Oh my gosh, I'm going to wait for Hamilton to get on here again. And if you have any clues there why that happened, but we'll just go ahead and continue the conversation here. So it's great. I've got Hamilton Winters on. He's going to go ahead and request to be back on with me. And we are talking about those 20-something relationships with our kids, and how we can confidently connect, and how we do this, and how we can have these conversation starters, and how we can get them as part of a community. So we're just going to wait here for Hamilton to put a request in again and just keep going. But I just want to thank you all for joining. I apologize for that happening. Let's go ahead here and see what we got. Instagram. Here we go. All right, so we're going to get to some questions because I know we're running in about 10 minutes here. Sorry about that. Did yours completely go off? Yeah, just said video ended. So I'll chalk it up to something that we were about to say was really powerful. I think so. I think so. Holy cow. Yeah, so I'm sorry about that. We're just rejoining on. Thank you for rejoining in here. This is the first time I've done an IG live like this that we're going to be dropping to a podcast as well as on the YouTube channel. So we'll see how this all works out. Let's transition really quick because I know we're going to be close on time here. I asked Hamilton a couple of things and what your 20-somethings want to tell you right now. I thought this was really interesting. And thanks for rejoining everybody. You came up with 5 things for this one. What your 20-somethings want to tell you. So what they want to tell us as parents: I'm okay, but I'm scared. I need some space, but not too much space. And trust me, but be there for me regardless of the outcome of my decisions. That's huge. Those were all a bit of a step back for me too, because I thought, okay, I check a couple of those, but not all of them. Yeah, and did you get what your young adult wants to hear from you as well? Yes, let's read those too. What your 20-somethings need to hear from us as parents. You're okay. I'm scared too. You need space, but not too much.
We trust you. We're here for you regardless of the outcome of your decisions. Wow.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun with that assignment because I'm thinking through, there are a million different things that your young adult wants to tell you,
Yeah.
and there are a million different things that you want to tell your young adult, but it doesn't have to be a complex conversation. It could be a meeting of two parties exactly where they are. I don't think that the way that your young adult feels and the way that you feel about your young adult are too far apart.
Mm.
And I think oftentimes both parties, and this is relatively every relationship, feel like there's a much further distance between where you are and where the
Yeah.
other party is, when in reality, you are always closer together than you believe yourself to be. And so
Yeah.
those two seem to mirror to me. They don't want to see you be perfect.
Right.
They want to know that you're scared too.
Yeah.
It's your first time being a young adult parent, just like it's their first time being a young adult. Having patience with each other, knowing that, hey, it's our first go round. There are going to be things that we're going to screw up, but at the end of the day, we're both imperfect people
Yes.
trying to live out a perfect mission in an imperfect world. And so those seem to allow for the grace, but also the truth.
Yeah.
That I think embodies both of these experiences.
I'm going to write those out and share those as well, because I just think they're so powerful, so powerful. Walk me through, if there's a 20-something watching right now, and maybe they're not in Atlanta. If they are, you have to get connected with Buckhead Young Adults. But if they're not, and there's somebody watching, or a parent of a 20-something watching, let's go through the kid first, or the adult. Let's talk about, they come home at the end of the day, they've worked, they're tired, maybe they're not taking care of themselves, they're not eating properly, because heck, what are you eating? I mean, you're putting a microwavable meal in or something in the oven, unless you're really a good cook. Maybe you're not exercising because you get home and you're tired. How can we get them to walk me through how we get them to get to something like Buckhead Young Adults? How do we get them there?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would love to study more about the paths that people take. If there is a trend, I would say the trend is it has to be their idea.
Mm. Mm.
Most of the time, when it's someone else's idea that you do anything, it's a far less powerful motivator. It's a far more powerful motivator when you do something because it's your idea. So you can do all you want to prime them for it being their idea. But at the end of the day, the decision has to be theirs. And I think I mentioned this as well, and this specifically relates to faith, but I think it relates to other things as well. A commonly used phrase in our organization is the easiest faith to be talked out of is a faith you felt like you were talked into. And so maybe the easiest action that you take is to be talked out of is an action you took because you felt like you were talked into it. And so you don't want to talk them into anything. I would focus mainly on the intrinsic benefits that meet the felt needs that they're experiencing, which is why our strategy is to help young adults experience the city, find their people, and grow their faith. There's a good chance that we're not going to build the influence right off the bat to help them grow their faith. If they come in through the church, awesome. I love that. I'm not sure why the fireworks are going off here, but maybe, I don't know.
You
but
blew it out. I'm telling you.
I love it. But the felt need is I'm in a new city and I want to experience the city. So we put on events in the community that are things that young adults want to do, but they don't have friends to do it. So we give them a group of people that's doing it and they can make friends through experiencing the city. And then maybe through it, they find their people. They don't find every person to hang out with, but they find 2, 3 that they can make a friend group out of. Yeah. And ultimately they meet some people that are interested in finding out more about the person of Jesus, which ultimately draws them in to the faith conversation, right? And so the felt need is the thing that they are constantly wondering, how am I going to get this need of experiencing the city and of finding my people, which are both things that most young adults want to do. Yeah. And through that, being able to draw them into ultimately a deeper conversation of, hey, it's great to experience the city. Hey, it's great to find your people. But ultimately, the spiritual issue is that we are all in need of a savior and a king, and his name is Jesus.
Yes.
And so let's tell you about him.
Yes, exactly. You know, Molly just on here just wrote the question, what about set the example as the parent?
No doubt. No doubt. So, it's the practice what you preach.
Yep.
I also put this in the document of, and we had a lot of parents from the comments that mentioned to you that they have struggles with their young adults falling away from church.
Yep.
Or falling
Yep.
away from God altogether. And it breaks my heart. At the same time, this is an incredible opportunity that we have to not only work on strengthening the faith of young adults, but strengthening our own trust and our own faith.
Yeah.
Because you can push your young adult to do anything you want to, but your own life is going to be a litmus test of whether you believe what you're saying or not.
Right.
And so,
right.
if you're telling them to go out and make friends, and you don't have good friends in your own life that are holding you accountable, you will never be able to get your young adult to find an accountability partner and friends.
Yeah.
If you are not actively attending things that bring folks in your community together and point them to the way of the cross, you will never, ever, I mean, I won't say never, ever, but there's a really good chance that you're going to have a very hard time getting them to do something that you yourself are not willing to do. And so I think Molly's point is 100% right.
Yeah.
Your life is the proof in the pudding.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
they want to see it by more than your words. They want to see it in your actions.
Yep. And that was the question that Kristen from Colorado brought up. My adult child brings up their uncertainty, questions, or doubts about their faith. I'm not sure how to respond. So thank you. We're going to move into some of these questions. We actually got, you know how many questions we got? 60.
Wow.
60 questions. We're not getting to all of them, but I did say that I'm going to send these to you, if that's okay, Hamilton, at the end, because I think everybody would love to get your advice on some of these. We're going to go through a few. I'm scared of these dating apps for our kids. I keep telling my daughter they're not safe, and she says everyone's using them. Christina from Nebraska. You know, I don't know. That's a whole nother story, probably for a whole nother show. But dating apps are a big deal.
They are a big deal, and I would love to tell you that I didn't spend a fair amount of time on them pre-pandemic. I went into the pandemic with a girlfriend who became my fiance and is ultimately my wife today. So I do not envy young adults that are dating in this environment. Yeah. I do not. And I try to meet them with so much grace because in a lot of ways, they don't know what the other person is looking for. Right. You know, and I have the male perspective, right? And so they don't know. There go the fireworks again. They don't know what the balance is between toxic masculinity and being someone without confidence. Yeah. And so the dating apps, in my opinion, have become a result of wanting there to be this unspoken consensual relationship here where I at least know that you think I'm cute. So there's a lesser chance that I'm going to be rejected. So I'm going to let the app tell me if you're interested in me so that I can decrease my chance for rejection. That's what they're scared of. That's what we're all scared of.
That's what we're all scared
rejection.
Yeah.
But when you think about history and how people have found, a mate, there is that inherent risk of rejection. Right. But when we overvalue rejection and we take it personally, other than, hey, there are 8 billion people in the world. If you split it down the middle and you say maybe 4 billion of them are, the opposite sex, and even smaller portion are, suitable relationships, like that is a lot of rejection, right? That you'd experience to find a person that's suitable for you. But the dating apps, it can be a dangerous game, but I have also seen really successful relationships from it. Yeah. So not being in the game recently, I can't tell you if the fruit outweighs the costs. So I have a hard time saying, oh, don't use the dating apps, because I've seen there be fruit. Exactly. I would proceed with caution. And nothing beats a physical interaction. I met my wife at church. Yes. I just walked up to her. We had a mutual friend. And so whatever you can do to have some infrastructure there that you're already driving on, instead of, trying to build the infrastructure as you start driving is helpful. So exactly. I love that. Thanks for answering that. It's Christina from Nebraska. I got a question here. We talked about a little bit, but this is Carla from New Jersey, and I want to address that. Believing in God defies logic is the response I'm getting from my son. And I have no response, is what Carla says. Yeah. In my opinion, the best response is not a response. Mm-hmm. And I think that's often a mistake that we make, is we want to find an answer for that question, right? Which, when you look at what Carla said, Carla's son or daughter, I can't remember what the
Son.
question said. Son, his was not a question.
Right.
His was a statement.
Yeah.
And so when you try to answer a statement with a statement, that's an argument. But when you try to answer a question with a question, that's a conversation. And so maybe answering the statement with a question is, well, tell me more about how you came to that conclusion. You know, when you seek first to understand and then to be understood, most of the time they want to throw an incendiary statement out there to test your reaction. And if it's a response instead of a reaction is emotional. A response is civil. And so when you respond with, oh, that's interesting that you say that, you know, like, tell me more about that.
Yes.
And you seek truly to understand where they're coming from. When you dive deep into a statement or a question like that, I find that there's usually a personal experience that they're tying that to. And that's the deeper question. And so I have conversations with people all the time of, I don't know, you know, if God's real, if bad things happen to good people. And when I start diving into that with questions, I usually find out that there was something bad that happened to them. And they see themselves as a good person that something bad happened to, and they can't reconcile that God made their dad go away.
Right.
They can't reconcile this experience that they had. And when you dive to the deep root of the issue, that's a totally different and more redemptive conversation than staying at the surface level and trying to bring scientific facts to prove that God is real. You know, like I want to make God real in your life, not just God real in existence. Yeah. And I think if we can make God real in your life, you'll start to see him in everything else. Yeah. But that's just my kind of 2 cents on it.
I love it. I appreciate that. I know Carla will like that answer for sure, because it's true. It's true. It's a good conversation starter, to be honest, and that's what we need.
No doubt. They want to have a conversation with you. You know? What a gift that your son even
What
said
a gift. So I got on an email, had my email going here too. Are there other programs? So if people aren't in Atlanta, everybody's loving you, by the way, and they're all saying, why don't you have a podcast, which maybe that's in your, I think you're such a blessing to so many. And your wisdom is great. You know, somebody just said, well, where can my son or daughter find some program like that if they don't live in Atlanta?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I wish I had an answer for you. Every city has something like this.
Yes.
This city didn't have anything like this just a few years ago. You know, this is only our second year in existence. Yeah. And so our strategy is to do what nobody's doing, to reach people nobody's reaching. And we put on events where I would have shown up to our events even when I wasn't ready to show up to church on a Sunday morning. You know, there go the fireworks again, man. I love it. It's great. You know,
people are loving it. They're loving you. That is for sure. I love it.
But I appreciate that. But you know, I hope that what we're doing, and I'm sure that there are other organizations that are doing.
I know there's one here where I'm in Florida.
Can kind of set the trend there. Yep. You know, our church network is called the Irresistible Church Network. And it's a network of churches that exist to reach unchurched people. So we create church environments for unchurched people. And so we actually have a website in every community, and you can find some of our churches on a map. I can't guarantee you that they're all going to have a young adults program and that their strategy is going to be similar to ours. But I would encourage you, and I'll make myself available to talk with you about this. If you or someone that you know has an interest in starting something like this in your city, like, please reach out. I'll share, you know, best practices. I'll share what we've learned, both success and failure. You don't know this, and I'm still working through it. But I am very interested in the next 2 years to write a second book that's just called Young Adult. Maybe this conversation is the questions I needed to find out what the felt need is in order to give that advice. And so I don't know if the folks watching this, listening to it, would like that. But I think it could be a really cool thing to turn around and be able to give that that advice. So
exactly.
Let me know.
We're running a little bit over, and we're just going to keep it because I said we'd go about 40 minutes today. And I just want to write for a lot of people that are joining now, because we got interrupted a little bit into this. Just the first sentence of Hamilton's quote, which was, perhaps no decade in life is more foundational, more important, more turbulent, and more consequential than your 20s. I just think that's so powerful. Let's talk about, you know, when you were in your 20s, do you see a difference now? I mean, you're 29 tomorrow. Happy birthday. Do you see a difference from, you know, your 22-year-olds walking in now? Are they different because of because like you said, the pandemic, the instant gratification, which we hear pressure all the time from, the instant stuff, likes, everything else on Instagram and Snapchat and everything else they do. Do you feel they're different even in that, 7 years from a 22-year-old that you were to the 20, how they are now?
100%.
Yeah.
That's why I love this age so much. It's because there's even, demographics within demographics of early 20s is so much different than your late 20s.
Yeah.
You look at the life stage that most people are in. You look at how many careers they've had by this time. You could go from being just out of college all the way, like I said, to married with kids. And you can still be in your 20s, and that's incredible. Something happens around 24 to 26. And I would love to study this more to where on the backside of it, you're still in your 20s, but it's almost a coming of age within a coming of age.
Yeah.
And I notice with every passing day, especially as we get new young adults coming in the door, that I'm like, man, wow, I'm a lot older than I thought I was. Like you guys, they were raised with TikTok. I wasn't. I'm an Instagram kid.
Right.
And the folks that came before us were Facebook kids, and so. The technology that they use, the language that they use, but at the end of the day, our hope is that we can find what is consistent across the board. And that is life experience. We all had our first job, we all have our first relationships. We all have heartbreaking, breakups. So what can we do to talk with them on a level that it doesn't matter how old you are, they understand that. And you can turn around and kind of give them your 2 cents there. But it's interesting. You could almost have a mentorship within the 20s, just late 20s, time back to early 20s. And to be honest, it's made me realize how grateful I am for my friends that were in their late 20s, early 30s that still loved me in my young 20s. Because I'm like, man, some of these kids, they'll come in the door and they might be knuckleheads. And that's fine.
Yeah.
But it gives me the understanding that, wow, I was a knucklehead too. And somebody loved me enough to walk with me through that. And so recipients of a grace like that are called to be givers of a grace like that. And so, I'm certainly a recipient of that.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's give 3 tangible takeaways for parents watching today. What are 3 things? We're going into a weekend. Some of us might be together I'm lucky I get 2 of my 3 are flying in here, which is really exciting. We're going to have some time together. Give us 3 conversation starters or 3 takeaways that we could maybe apply to just connect a little bit more confidently with our 20-somethings.
That's great. I love the question, how are you? But ask it twice. Okay. I don't know if you've ever asked that question twice.
I don't.
But generally you
so.
get a different answer the second time you ask it. So if I was to say, hey, how are you? You're like, oh, I'm doing well. And you're like, no, seriously, how are you? Well, this week's been pretty tough for me.
Yeah.
Totally different conversation.
Yeah. Your shoulders drop. You should get your guard off a little bit. Yeah. Okay.
Different conversation. So I would encourage the how are you doing? It seems so simple. And it is. And that's the beauty of it. Asking a question twice like that, a check-in, is unbelievable. Who are you spending your time with? Who are your friends? I love that I know my friends' parents.
Yeah.
I love that my parents know my friends.
Yeah.
And they ask about them. Whatever you can do to be involved in your children's friendships, investing in your children's friends, encouraging them to find good friends, or like what you did. What you did was so bold in going to find a church that might be something for
it's pretty bold.
That's like all-star mom move of the century, and look how it paid off,
It did.
Not just with our environment, but just you felt more comfortable sending your son to the city knowing at least there's there's a church that's interested in finding a place for my son, And so, me, I know you, and we invite all of the parents of young adults who are in town to come to our coffee hour in between services. You've come to it before.
I love it.
We have 80, 90 young adults doing coffee and donuts in between services on Sunday. And you can tell who the parents are. It's generally just a 20s environment, but they know my mom because my mom comes all the time and I have her back there serving donuts. And so it's a really cool thing to know your kids' friends and for your kids' friends to know you. And then maybe the third thing is I love when my parents plan things to do with us. So if there's an opportunity to get some time with your young adult kid, take it.
Yep.
What is their interest? Even if
Yep.
it's something that you're not interested in, that's
Mm-hmm.
okay. You can swallow that and go play golf, even if you're not a golfer. Go camping, even if you're not a camper. Go rock climbing. It might be the hardest 2 hours of your life, but it might just be the thing that levels the playing field again, you know, and allows for a time, a memory that otherwise wouldn't be made. And so don't wait for your young adult to take initiative. You take initiative. Hey, I want to go play golf. Let me know when and where, and I'll book the tee time, and I'll buy the golf balls, and I'll be there.
Yep.
So that's probably the three things.
I love it. I wrote them down. I will be sharing those. And the last thing before we go, one, I want you to mention your book. Do you have your book with you there?
I do not have a copy with me, but I'm happy to talk with you about it.
Okay, so we'll do that. I'll put the link on the podcast episode part and the links to reach you. Let's end with one thing that these young adults that are coming on today and watching, these 20-somethings, what can they do? What can they do on their part to strengthen the relationship? Maybe connect confidently with their parents this weekend.
Yeah, I think it's a two-way street. Just like any relationship. You both have to meet in the middle. Have you ever tried to shake somebody's hand when they don't put their hand out? You can't. It takes them meeting you halfway to shake their hand and for y'all to come into communion in that way. And so I would encourage young adults, hey, what can you do to meet your parents in the middle? It's so redemptive when two people that come from totally different backgrounds or positions swallow their pride to meet in the middle. I'm not telling you have to go all the way to that side. I'm just saying be willing to meet halfway. Make the phone call. There are a lot of people that wish they could call their parents and can't.
True.
Because it's too late.
Yeah.
And so it's not too late to call your young adult. It's not too late for young adults to call their parents. And I hope that it won't be. I hope that maybe this conversation is a good impetus behind just make the phone call. It could be 5 minutes of a check-in, but who knows, that 5 minutes could turn into 10 minutes and 15 minutes or 30 minutes once a week, 30 minutes twice a week, an everyday conversation that otherwise might not have started had you not made that first move. So don't be afraid to make the first move.
Thank you. I hope you saw some of the comments that went up there. You incredible time. I'm sorry we went a little over. I'm not sorry because it was such valuable information. I'm sorry we cut out halfway through, but that's okay. We'll paste it all back together. Hamilton, thank you for this time. Thank you for your wisdom, your transparency and honesty, and the takeaways that we have both as parents and as the 20-somethings, that we can connect more confidently. That's what it's all about. You're a gift.
Well, you are too. Thank you for having me on, and let me know if there's anything I can do. I'm happy to send books out. I'm happy to answer questions. And so just let me know.
I will.
I'm here as
Absolutely. I'll have every way of connecting with Hamilton, connecting with me. This will be replayed and put on a podcast as well. I'll be sharing, but I hope to have you back too, because there's so much more to dig into. And
so much more.
But thank you so much for your time. Happy Easter.
Thank you. Happy Easter to you too.
Thanks everybody for joining. We'll see you next time.